Right. So are you ready to like really get into it today? Because we are talking about Tommy Robinson
Oh, yeah?
and this whole free speech thing that goes with this whole case.
Yeah.
And we're going to be looking at this article from The Economist called The Extreme, right after the riots in Britain.
Right.
And this is a really interesting case because it kind of hits on a lot of things that are going on globally. You know,
Definitely.
it's not just some isolated UK thing.
Yeah.
It's about social media and about where that line is between, you know, saying whatever you want and when it becomes actually harmful.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. This case is almost like a perfect example of what democracies are struggling with all over the world right now. How do we make space for individual rights like freedom of speech,
Right.
but also protect vulnerable groups from hate speech and misinformation?
Yeah, it's a tough one.
It is. It's like walking a tightrope.
So let's just get like the basics out of the way first.
Sure.
Who is this guy, Tommy Robinson?
Well, his real name is actually Stephen Yaxley Lennon, and he's someone who's been really deeply involved in far-right activism in the UK.
Okay.
He kind of became a symbol of anti-Islam and anti-immigration feelings,
Right.
and he was a leader in the English Defence League.
And The Economist really makes it clear that this case isn't just happening, you know, on its own.
Yeah.
It's part of this bigger trend of these far-right movements, especially in Europe.
Absolutely. We're seeing it everywhere, right?
All over the headlines.
Yeah.
So this specific case, though, goes back to 2018 and the Syrian refugee named Jamal Hijazi.
Exactly. A video of Hijazi being attacked at school went viral.
Right.
And Robinson, who had this huge platform on Facebook at the time, used this video to push this story that Hijazi was the one being violent.
Wow.
Which turned out to be totally false.
That's just adding insult to injury.
Right.
It's awful. And this is where it gets really complicated, right?
Yeah.
You've got Robinson with all these followers online spreading this fake information. And The Economist points out that this led to Hijazi and his family getting death threats.
It's terrible.
So Hijazi sues Robinson for defamation, and he wins.
Good.
And the court even issues this thing called an injunction to stop Robinson from repeating these lies.
Right.
Now, I know injunction might sound kind of legalese, but it basically means the court is saying, like, stop doing this or else.
Yeah, exactly. And that or else is serious stuff.
Right.
I mean, defamation, which is what Robinson was sued for, it's not just about hurting someone's feelings.
Right.
It's about damaging their reputation so badly that it could really mess up their life.
Yeah.
Like they could lose their job or be isolated from their community.
Yeah, it's serious stuff.
The courts don't take it lightly.
So the court's trying to protect Hijazi, but then Robinson does something even more, I don't know, provocative.
Oh.
He goes and makes this whole film saying that the state is trying to silence him.
Right.
And then shows it to thousands of his supporters in Trafalgar Square.
Wow.
It's like he's challenging the court.
It's almost like he wants them to do something.
Yeah, he's poking the bear.
It's a classic move for people like Robinson.
Really?
The Economist talks about how they often act like they're the victims of censorship.
Right.
You know, they say they're being silenced when they're actually facing the consequences of spreading harmful stuff and hate speech.
So it's all a show.
Yeah, it's a show, and it works because it gets people who are already suspicious of authority on their side.
That makes sense.
You know, it feeds into those existing feelings.
So, like, we all probably guessed he gets in trouble for contempt of court.
Of course.
Now, I know we throw around these legal terms,
Mm-hmm.
but can you just explain what contempt of court actually means for, like, normal people?
Sure. Basically, it means you've disrespected the court's authority or disobeyed a direct order from a judge.
Okay.
In Robinson's case, he was specifically told not to repeat the false claims about Hijazi,
Right.
but he did it publicly, and he did it over and over.
He just couldn't help himself.
Yeah, so this disregard for the legal system got him an 18-month jail sentence.
Wow.
The judge basically said, nobody is above the law.
And that brings us to this whole debate about free speech versus harmful speech.
Right.
Where do we draw that line?
That's a question that's been around forever, right?
I guess so.
Philosophers and legal experts have been arguing about it for centuries.
Centuries. Wow.
Yeah. On one hand, you have the fundamental right to express yourself freely, which is super important for a democracy.
Right.
But on the other hand, you have the responsibility to make sure your speech doesn't encourage violence, spread harmful lies, or violate the rights of others.
Yeah.
Finding that balance is really, really tricky.
So how do we even decide where the line is? Who gets to decide?
That is the big question, right? It's a constant balancing act.
Yeah.
And different societies draw that line in different places.
It's not like a one-size-fits-all.
Nope. The Economist points out that this case sparked a huge debate in the UK about the limits of free speech
Right.
and whether Robinson's punishment was too harsh or not harsh enough.
And then we have to add social media to all of this,
Right.
which makes everything so much more complicated.
Exactly.
How can you hold people responsible for what they say online
Right.
when platforms like Facebook and Twitter have billions of users?
It's overwhelming.
It's like trying to herd cats.
The Economist brings up this idea of platform responsibility, which is a huge topic right now. Should these companies be held responsible for the content that's shared on their platforms?
That's a good question.
Do they have a duty to moderate content and stop the spread of misinformation? These are questions that governments and tech companies are trying to figure out all over the world.
Yeah, I mean, is there even a way to balance protecting free speech with stopping harmful content online?
It feels impossible sometimes, right?
Yeah.
It's definitely a tough challenge. And The Economist doesn't give any easy answers, but they do point to some potential ways to approach this. One idea is to focus on media literacy.
Like teaching people how to spot fake news.
Exactly. Teaching people how to think critically about the information they come across and identify misinformation. Another idea is to hold social media companies accountable for their algorithms.
Oh, yeah, the algorithm.
Making sure those algorithms don't promote harmful content.
So it's like we need a whole new set of rules for the internet age.
Yeah, maybe the old ways of thinking about free speech just don't work anymore.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And this case with Robinson, it's just the beginning.
It is. As technology keeps changing
Right.
and the lines between online and offline get blurrier,
Yeah.
we're going to see more and more cases like this, more debates about free speech, and more challenges to our traditional ideas about responsibility and accountability.
Okay, so we've kind of set the scene here. We know who the players are, the basics of the case, and some of the big questions that come up.
Yeah,
But let's dig a little deeper now.
let's do.
Let's really unpack what The Economist is saying and see what we can learn from this whole situation.
Okay, I'm ready.
Let's go.
One thing The Economist does that's really interesting is how they connect this case to these bigger trends that are happening. It's not just about Robinson himself. They're pointing out this whole pattern of far-right figures using the same tactics,
Right.
portraying themselves as victims of censorship.
Playing the victim card.
Exactly, while they're actually spreading this dangerous rhetoric.
So it's all part of the strategy.
He seems like one.
Play the victim and then appeal to people's concerns about free speech being under attack.
Yeah, they tap into that fear.
But you can't just shout whatever you want and say it's protected speech, can you?
That's the thing, and this is where it gets really complicated.
Yeah.
The Economist argues that free speech isn't this absolute right that has no limits.
Okay.
There are limits, especially when speech incites violence or spreads lies that can be proven false or harms other people.
So where's the line? That's what I want to know.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
this constant balancing act, and
Yeah.
different societies draw that line in different places.
But not universal.
Not at all. The Economist highlights how this case started a huge debate in the UK.
About Robinson.
Yeah, about the limits of free speech and whether Robinson's punishment was too harsh or not harsh enough.
It's interesting how people had such different reactions.
It really shows you how divided people are on this issue.
And then, of course, there's social media, which just adds another layer of complexity.
Right.
How do you hold people accountable for what they say online?
Yeah, it's a tough one.
When platforms like Facebook and Twitter have billions of users,
It's a whole different world.
it feels impossible.
The Economist brings up this idea of platform responsibility.
Yeah. I've been hearing a lot about that lately.
It's a hot topic.
Yeah.
Should these companies be responsible for the content that's shared on their platforms?
I mean, they created the platform, didn't they?
That's one way to look at it. Do they have a duty to moderate content and prevent the spread of misinformation?
Right. And how do you do that without censoring people?
Exactly. These are the questions that governments and tech companies are grappling with all over the world.
So do you think there's a way to strike a balance?
I don't know. It's tough to say.
Yeah.
Can we protect free speech while also preventing the spread of harmful content online?
It seems almost impossible.
It's a huge challenge, and The Economist doesn't pretend to have all the answers,
Okay.
but they do point to some possible approaches.
Like what?
One idea is to focus on media literacy, teaching people how to evaluate information they see online.
Right, so they can spot the fake stuff.
Exactly. And another idea is to hold social media companies accountable for their algorithms.
Oh, yeah, like change the algorithm.
Yeah, make sure those algorithms don't amplify harmful content.
So we need to adjust how things work online.
It might be time for some updates.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, this whole case with Robinson, it feels like just the tip of the iceberg.
You're absolutely right.
Right.
As technology keeps evolving and the lines between the online world and the offline world keep getting blurrier.
Yeah, like it's all blending together.
Exactly.
It's hard to even tell the difference sometimes.
We're going to see more and more cases like this, more debates about free speech.
Yeah, probably more intense debates too.
I think so, and we'll see even more challenges to our traditional ideas about responsibility and accountability.
So this case with Robinson, it's like a wake-up call in a way.
I think so. It forces us to really think about some uncomfortable truths about the world we live in.
Yeah, we can't just pretend these things aren't happening.
No, we can't ignore them. We can't just bury our heads in the sand.
It's like The Economist is holding up a mirror to society and saying, look, this is what's going on.
I like that analogy.
And it's up to us to decide what we're going to do about it.
Exactly. We all have a responsibility here.
So where do we even start? What can we actually do to address these really complex issues?
Well, I think it starts with individual responsibility.
Okay.
We have to be more careful about what we do online.
Yeah.
The things we share, the comments we make. Think before you post.
Is that your advice? Think before you post.
Definitely. Is what you're sharing accurate? Is it respectful? Is it contributing to a positive online environment?
It's so easy to just react without thinking.
Yeah. Especially online.
Yeah. Where everyone's got an opinion.
But we have to remember that words have power.
Yeah, they do.
They can incite things, inflame things, and cause real harm.
And it's not just about what we do as individuals, right?
Right. It's bigger than that.
We have to hold the people in power accountable, too.
Absolutely. We need more from social media companies,
Right.
from lawmakers, from the institutions that shape our society.
So we need better policies, basically.
Yeah, policies that protect free speech, but also limit the harms of hate speech and misinformation.
It's like walking a tightrope again.
It is a delicate balance.
That's tough.
But it's a conversation we need to have.
Yeah, we can't shy away from these tough issues.
Exactly. And we need to be willing to listen to each other.
Yeah, that's important.
Even when we disagree.
It's so hard, though.
I know it is, but that's the only way we're going to find common ground
Okay.
and build a more inclusive and equitable society.
So as we wrap up this deep dive on Tommy Robinson and free speech,
Right.
I want to leave you with this final thought. Okay. This case might seem like just another news story, but it raises issues that affect all of us.
Yeah.
The battle for free speech is happening everywhere.
Absolutely.
It's online, in our courts, in our communities,
It's all connected.
and we all have a stake in what happens next.
Yeah, it's true.
The choices we make, both individually and collectively, will decide what kind of society we're going to have.
That's a powerful thought.
Will we let division and hate win,
I hope not.
or will we build a world where everyone feels safe, respected, and heard?
That's what we should be striving for.
That's the question we all have to think about.
It's a big one.
And it's a question that's going to keep challenging us for years to come.
It's not going away anytime soon.
So stay informed, stay engaged, and stay hopeful.
Good advice.
The future is in our hands.
This case, it's like a wake-up call,
Yeah.
It makes us face some hard truths about the world we're living in. We
Yeah.
can't just pretend these things aren't happening.
No, definitely not. We can't just bury our heads in the sand and hope it all goes away.
Right, exactly.
It's like The Economist is holding up a mirror,
Mhm.
showing us all the cracks in society.
I like that. It's a good way to put it.
And then they're like, okay, now what are you going to do about it?
That's on us, right? We have to decide how to respond.
So where do we even begin?
Well, I think it starts with each of us taking responsibility.
Okay, what do you mean?
We have to think about how we behave online.
Yeah,
The things we share, the comments we make.
right.
Like, remember that saying, think before you speak.
Oh, yeah.
We need that for the internet.
Think before you post.
Exactly. Think before you post. Is what you're sharing accurate? Is it respectful? Is it adding something positive to the online world?
It's so easy to get caught up in the moment, though,
Oh, I know.
especially online where
Wow.
everyone's, firing off opinions.
It's like a free-for-all sometimes.
It is. But we have to remember that words have power.
Yeah, they really do.
They can stir things up, cause harm.
Absolutely.
And it's not just about us as individuals.
No, definitely not.
We need to hold the people in power accountable, too.
I completely agree. We need more from social media companies, from the government, from all the institutions that shape our world.
So we need better laws, better regulations.
Yeah, policies that protect free speech, but also put limits on hate speech and the spread of misinformation.
It sounds like another one of those balancing acts.
It is a very delicate balance.
How do we find that balance?
That's the question, isn't it? We have to have these tough conversations.
Okay.
We can't avoid them.
No, sweeping it under the rug doesn't help.
And we have to listen to each other.
Even when it's hard.
especially when it's hard, even when we completely disagree with the other person.
Yeah, that's tough.
It is, but it's
No.
the only way we're going to find some common ground.
Okay, so if we can do that, maybe we can build a better world.
I think so. A world where everyone feels safe, respected, and heard.
So to wrap up this deep dive into Tommy Robinson and free speech, I want to leave everyone with this one last thought.
I'm listening.
This case, it might seem far away, like it doesn't affect us.
Right. People might think it's just another news story.
Exactly. But the issues it raises, these are things that affect all of us.
They really do.
The fight for free speech, this is happening everywhere.
Everywhere, all the time.
It's online, it's in our courts, it's in our communities.
It's all around us.
And what happens next? It's up to all of us.
We all have a role to play.
The choices we make,
Yeah.
whether we're talking about personal choices or choices we make as a society, those choices will determine what kind of world we end up with.
It's a lot of responsibility.
It is. Will we give in to the forces of division and hate?
I hope not.
Or will we create a world where everyone feels safe, respected, and heard?
That's a world worth fighting for.
That's the question I think we all need to ask ourselves.
It's a big one.
And it's not going to go away anytime soon.
It's going to keep coming up in different ways.
So stay informed, stay engaged,
Stay curious.
and most importantly, stay hopeful.
We need hope.
We all have a part to play in building a better future.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
That's it for our deep dive today. Thanks for listening.